This one is based on the novel by Jack London, and it's not the first adaptation of it. However, I'm pretty sure I've never seen one before, nor am I familiar with the novel itself. But the story here follows a big dog, that through a series of events ends up in the Yukon up north. Far from home and far from his comfort zone, and he's a bit of an unruly character, who gets himself in some trouble and ends up on a few adventures. Oh, and this all takes place during the gold rush. And that's more or less the gist of it, and in this adaptation the dog is fully CGI. And they went with this pseudo-realistic animation style in this one too. A style that's not cartoony but not fully realistic either, which I gotta admit I'm not a fan of. Because it just doesn't look great to me. It's like a weird half measure. One that doesn't really commit to either extreme but just settles somewhere in the middle and looks kinda bleh. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure this one is aimed at kids, and I don't think kids really care. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, and it's not like it ruined the movie for me either. But I can't really give the movie praise for the CGI either, because it's not great. But what is pretty good though is the integration of the CGI dogs with the live action, because it's pretty much seamless, and I was especially impressed by Harrison Ford here. He didn't phone it in and genuinely acted like he was next to a real dog that he cared for. And that went a long way in getting me emotionally invested in this. Because up until his character really gets involved, which isn't until like the halfway point, I couldn't claim to have been all that emotionally involved in this. A little bit, but not much. I mean, it does tug on your heartstrings and it tries its best, but before that halfway point it was only semi-successful. It was really the dynamic between the dog and Harrison Ford that made it fully successful. Speaking of which, Harrison Ford narrates this every once in a while too, and I couldn't help but to think of the infamous narration for the original Blade Runner movie, where he basically sabotages the whole thing and does the worst job he possibly could. And well, it's not that bad here, but I don't think narration is really his strong suit either. And I feel like they could have probably found someone else to handle that part, to be honest. But yeah, as a whole, this movie works. It's an old and proven story. And this adaptation does a fine job with it, but I wouldn't say it ever blew me away. It works, but there's not much that actually impressed me or that I found to be noteworthy. Everything was more or less fine, and I wouldn't expect less from Chris Sanders and Michael Green either. The former who has a very strong track record with a bunch of Disney movies and How to Train Your Dragon. And the latter who recently wrote movies like the new Blade Runner and Logan. But neither does this really compare to any of those movies, and I doubt this was any sort of passion project for them either. But they still did a good job with it and made a perfectly decent and watchable movie. Which only leaves one question unanswered. Would I recommend it? Maybe. Especially if you have kids, they might end up liking this. So maybe give it a look-see, or don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through the links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.